your dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
Good morning, Muskegon. This is EyeOnMuskegon, and I'm Jim Riley here in Muskegon's Clear Channel Studios with my friend and engineer, that legendary, the most unbelievably most recognized name in radio, Oscar Osbo. I should get that out a little better in the future, maybe. And the equally legendary Captain Fred Birch. Good morning, both of you guys, Fred and Oscar.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As always, we are Muskegon's #1 rated political talk radio show. We do want to hear from you, so give us a call. 830-3109. If you want to get on the radio, here's your chance, folks. It doesn't happen that often. Today is January 29th, 2012, and as our radio promos promised, this morning we're going to talk about municipal transparency and honesty, and how much of the truth we are being told, and how much of what we are being told is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, which sometimes we find out it may not be. And we will, a little bit later in the show, have Mackinac Center's Jack McHugh calling in, and we will dive into that around 9, a little after 9 o'clock. But before we get deep into transparency or the lack thereof, honesty or the lack thereof, sophistry, which is a term maybe we'll even define for the good listeners. But as always, we want to get into the hot topics of the week. And okay, question to you guys: in 2002, President George W. Bush made a speech. Real big, famous speech. Anybody recall the speech? Anybody do their homework on that? Probably not. That's okay. I wouldn't have either. But it was the Axis of Evil speech. Now, does anybody remember who the Axis of Evil was?
Let's see. North Korea, Iran, Iraq, and Libya.
No, you got it. Those three.
Good for you. Yeah, that's true.
Good for you. I got North Korea and Iran, and I forgot that Iraq at that point in time was one of the evilest, most monstrous countries in the world. So,
well, I was up against the Axis of Evil at that time. I was on the front lines defending against those folks.
You weren't floating around with the captain of the Costa Consadina or whatever the name of
No, but my new hero is that Italian Coast Guard officer that ordered that guy back on board his own ship.
You got to love that, and you got to hate it. It's pretty sad. Okay, a couple things we want to get to. Monday, if you're interested in voting in the presidential primary that we are going to be having here in Michigan at the end of February, tomorrow, Monday, is the last day for you to register. And frankly, unless you've just recently moved, you ought to be registered with Motor Voter. If you breathe, certainly you're registered. I'm not even sure you need to breathe to register to vote these days, but you do have Monday is the last day. One thing that's happened, we talked last week with Muskegon County Clerk Nancy Waters about this election coming up, and she made it very clear, I think, and I think she did a fine job, and made it clear that you must request the Republican or the Democrat ballot when you vote. Now, that's not going to be an issue when you go into the polling place, but if you are sending in your absentee ballot request, you must check that box, and they are getting those ballots sent back. Your vote may not count, so make sure you look for the little box, check it off, or your vote will not count, and then you can go, gnash your teeth and bay at the moon and complain about the unfairness of life because you didn't read.
Did she ever say why we had to let them know that it were? Yeah, we
got into that.
I mean, I now know you did. That's how I was
well, yes, she did. But in a nutshell, the Republican Party has its own club, if you will.
Right.
And if you're going to vote in their own club to decide who the president nominee for their own little club is going to be, you got to say, "Hey, I'm a Republican." Now that's the rules for this election. The rules can change and have changed in just about every election out there.
Those Republicans, I don't know about
those you. Well, as Nancy had told me. The fact that President Obama will also be on the ballot, even though the Democrats are planning on having a caucus rather than a primary, is she said, well, this might be our Secretary of State being mischievous. And actually, I don't think that's the case. I think it is maybe more the way the laws were written, or the law affecting this particular election, and it may be that the law was written with mischievousness in mind.
I want to see the Democrats that are doing the the mischievous things too. Maybe that was it too in the elections.
Mischievous.
Well, I know because he said he would be if he was, some years ago.
Oh, absolutely. You would cross over, and I fault our state Republican Party for allowing this to happen. I would say actually encouraging it. I think it's going to backfire on them because it's pretty clear that the state Republicans have been and endorsed. Many of them have publicly endorsed, but certainly the bulk of that hierarchy of the Republican Party seems to be supporting Governor Romney in this election. And the question I would ask is, if you want to be mischievous, if you're a Democrat that wants to cross over and vote, and certainly they're welcome to do it, it's very legal to do it, who would you vote for if you're in a mischievous mood? Would you vote for Newt? You might end up getting Newt.
Yeah. That's...
Or Ron Paul.
Well, Ron Paul. Well, Ron Paul would at least be legit because he's going to cause some trouble for the Republicans if he gets more and more votes.
Well,
but I don't know if I was a Democrat.
Is he going to cause problems or is he going to bring solutions? That's the question. He's looking for.
We got a Paulist here.
No, I'm not a Paulist. I'm just saying that he has some very intriguing things that he has to say that he's bringing to the Republican Party. And part of this election cycle is there's about 14% of the folks out there that agree with him that say, look, we need to get this budget under control. We need to go towards libertarianism. We need to do these things. We do want liberty. Now, in my particular case, as everybody well knows, I'm a big foreign affairs advocate, and that's the thing that I differ from Ron Paul with. But I have to say there are many of his ideas that appeal to me.
Well, you're not alone. And, this is an opportunity. Again, make sure that you are registered and make sure that if you are voting absentee, that you check the box. And if you are have that mischievous little part of your soul and you want to get out and vote to cause some trouble, do your homework. And,
are you doing a reverse Operation Chaos on us?
Well, I would do it if the politician was on the other foot. And in this case, I'm unhappy that the Republican
but that can backfire.
Allowed that.
Excuse me, that can backfire too. So it's,
absolutely, and as it did, actually, the old Operation Chaos did sort of backfire. But you mentioned you have interest in foreign affairs, and it leads me right to the next thing on my page here. Last week, Fitch, which is one of the big bond rating agencies like Standard & Poor's, S&P, they downgraded Spain, Italy, Belgium, Cyprus, and Slovenia. Now, that is big time. We have never seen downgrades in what they call sovereign debt. In other words, the treasury bonds that are issued by countries. And, of course, recently we saw the United States downgraded. We saw France downgraded. They call it downgrade-o-rama. This is very scary, folks, internationally.
This is coming 2 weeks after Standard & Poor's had already downgraded a bunch of those. They had done 13 of them, I think it was, earlier. And the fact that Fitch is doing it didn't cause a big ripple in the market, but it is very, very important for people to understand that this stuff is starting to roll very, very fast. And if you look at Greece and you look at Portugal is now paying 140% on their bond issues. 140%. That's a pretty nice return.
Well, and you'd almost have to get that return very quickly because there is the expectation, you're not paying that kind of interest rate, but there is the expectation that those bonds will default. Very much like the green companies that the United States has invested in, the Solandras and the others. Well, believe it or not, and this is sad. It gets worse. This is we don't really get a lot of information about China, at least in the national news, and certainly none in the local news. But they call this China's very mysterious data. I'll just read the quote. It says, "I could not help noticing that China's imports from Japan, and they are two big trading partners, fell 16% in December. Imports from Taiwan fell 6% in December. The Shanghai Container Freight Index, which is a very the containers actually are what's considered to be a view into the future in terms of, what's going to be happening to the world economy. Record low in November. The Baltic Dry Index, another freight measure, fell 44% last year. The international economies, the world economies, are absolutely collapsing, folks. This is, to me, this is maybe the biggest story of the day, and yet it's hardly being covered.
Well, it's all transparent.
Well,
people are looking right through it.
We are talking transparency, and we're going to be talking local transparency later on in the show. But this is national transparency, and I'll give you there's an interesting statistic that I picked up last week, and this should send a chill down anybody's back, especially if you truly, in fact, do care about people and the children and working folks. There are a variety of unemployment rates. The Chronicle recently somewhat touted the fact that the unemployment rate in Muskegon had come down, and then at the bottom of the article, at least they were honest enough to put in, well, the reason really is because we've lost 2,000 jobs, we've lost population. It's simply a mathematical number. The reality is that employment in Muskegon and much of the United States is just awful. But there's another number that's a real number that we ought to be looking at, and that is the number of working-age Americans who are working and who are not. Now, historically, the number of unemployed working Americans of working age, essentially that's between 18 and 65, nice simple arithmetic division, typically it would be in the neighborhood of 10 to 12%. In other words, take the population numbers are easy to find, and you've got the numbers of people who are employed, which is relatively easy to find. 3 years ago, when President Obama was elected, that number was 12%. It was at the high end of past ranges, but still not awful. It was within what we'd seen in the previous 20 years. Currently, that number's 23%. It's almost double. It has not been even near that level since the Great Depression. This is a national tragedy, a national disaster.
Well, not only that, but if you then further break that number down and you start talking about the numbers of people between the ages of 16 and 30, it is approaching 50%.
Yeah. When you get into the younger people, well, how would you like to have gone through our college system and borrowed with smiley faced people that just had a pen and said, "Here, just sign the check or sign the document, and the check is in the mail, baby."
You're talking about my daughter right now.
Well, and
we
my son.
Yeah, and it's if you think that our president, and I think it's important not to bash the president, but you've got to look at how we got to where we are today. The Republicans have been in charge of one branch of government, the House of Representatives, for 1 year. The Democrats held the House of Representatives for the previous 2, and the Senate for the previous 3, plus the presidency.
Well, the House of Representatives since 2006.
Well, that's right, going way back. Exactly the same thing with the Senate. So in other words, we've got. It's pretty darn hard, and I know the president will say that. He'll say, "Oh, it's not my fault; it's somebody else's fault." Well, the realities are that when you've got the power, you've got the control, and you've got the responsibility, and we have numbers. I mean, we went from a 12%, which was a high, historic high, to 23%. It's not, folks. This is Armageddon. This is awful. Anyway, believe it or not,
but we don't mean to scare you at all.
Right.
Well, I think the good news is that it does get worse, at least for the show. If we're talking news out there, things that happened.
Well, I was just going to ask you, though, too, when you say, of course, you did sound kind of like President Clinton when you did, "That's not my fault," but...
I'd say I was thinking of a local politician when I said that, but we won't get into that.
Oh, okay. I kind of know who that might be. But anyway, is it, I'm not saying it isn't his fault, but whose fault is it? I mean, is he really getting the help that he needs to get things?
Well, it isn't the president's fault per se. He inherited, obviously, some very tough situations, but
from a Republican, by the way.
From a Republican. Well, yeah. but to be fair, as Fred just mentioned, the Democrats did control the House and the Senate and voted in some very, very serious, troublesome bills. And let's not let the Republicans off here. But remember what happened 4 years ago during the campaign. The president, our current president of the United States, he said it's not my fault. Fair enough, but he promised to fix it.
Right.
Not only did he not fix it, it's twice as bad.
But if you don't have anybody working with you, though, with that...
Well, and I just said he's got the Senate.
Yeah.
He had the House for 2 of the 3 years.
That's true.
He's had really more ammo. I mean, remember what Ronald Reagan did when he inherited a very disastrous situation back in the 80s, and of course we had the Cold War going on and everything else. He had a Democrat House and Senate for all but I think he had the Senate for 2 years.
Right.
So he was able. He didn't use that excuse. It's not my fault. Right. He said, "I'm going to get it fixed and I'm going to get it handled."
And he did.
And unfortunately, well, we just had an opportunity for our president, like you just said, that is it his fault? Well, he just canceled the Keystone pipeline. Now, that to me is a very big deal. That's the pipeline that will bring oil from Canada, our number one trading partner, down to the United States. But here's a statistic that was not brought up. Oh, and by the way, the president said that the pipeline was not in the national interest.
Right.
Now,
I did agree with that, but I was just saying.
Well, whether you agree, with the environmental side or whatever, the pipeline would move 830 barrels a day, which is about half of what we currently get from the Persian Gulf.
Right.
So if you care about the national security side of energy, here's the answer. Here's a way. And by the way, you want shovel ready. I mean, 120,000 jobs. You've got any number of billions and billions now that are going to be lost because much of this was in place. So much of the pipe has already been produced and is waiting to be put in. Right. But just think, half of the oil that we currently get from the Persian Gulf could be replaced by Canada. And the President of the United States says it's not in our national interest. I don't think Roger Miller would like that at all. I think he'd say, those dang government, they're sticking it to us again. And that is the truth. So we'll have to sell some advertising and pay for this wonderful show. And we will be back shortly.
Oh, don't you love me sometime?
America's digital goddess, Kim Commando here. Cameras, camcorders, home electronics, HD TVs, computers, online security, privacy, Facebook, MySpace, Blu-ray, and MP3s. Phew, it's a good thing I'm so very gentle on your ears. If it's in your digital life, it's right here on your radio. After all, they don't call me America's digital goddess for nothing.
Kim Commando. Catch the show Sundays at noon on News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon.
I love you, I love you, I love you.
Oh, you're making me blush.
Why? I was talking to my iHeartRadio app.
You'll love iHeartRadio. It lets you listen to 750 real radio stations from across the country, including your favorite talk show hosts. Plus, you can create custom music stations, commercial-free until April, all on your smartphone and absolutely free.
Don't you love me?
Of course. I just love you more if you were an iHeartRadio app.
Download the new iHeartRadio app today or experience it online at iHeartRadio.com.
Attention area car buyers! It's our first sale of the year at Great Lakes Ford Lincoln in Muskegon. Make winter driving fun and just go in the snow in a new 2012 Ford Edge, Escape, Explorer, Expedition, and F-Series pickup, or a Lincoln MKX, MKZ, Navigator, or MKT, all slash up to $9,000 off. $9,000 off! Now at Great Lakes Ford. Looking for pre-owned? Get an 08 Ford Escape 4x4 for just $229 a month with $0 down. An 05 F-150 Super Crew XLT with just 62,000 miles, or an 09 Ford Taurus all-wheel drive. Your choice, just $239 a month with $0 down. Plus, make no payments till spring. For credit, call 231-777-2750. And we want your trade-in. It's our first sale of the year. But hurry, it all ends soon at Great Lakes Ford Lincoln in Muskegon, the dealer you can trust.
Discounts from MSRP, 4.99% APR, 72 months plus tax and fees with qualified credit rebates included, subject to prior sales. See dealer for details.
The talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090 WKBZ.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well,
every pocket of my clothes, folks. Maybe the answer to the American citizen when dealing with government, the greedy, overbearing government, is just to get rid of our pockets. Or, as so many have done, get rid of any assets and just demand free money, because that's the way of of this country, 51% now, or the households in this country are getting money from the federal government, or is
some type of assistance?
Some type of assistance. I found this kind of an interesting comment. We were talking about our president, and let's face it, presidents get the credit when things go well, and certainly they get condemned and attacked when things don't go well, and certainly by any measure, things are not going well for most people in this country today. With the Costa Concordia, now there's another dead person, which is another body found. But here's the quote. It's obvious what happened here. An unqualified captain taking reckless actions which ended in disaster. Francesco Schettino is to sailing as Barack Obama is to government. Unqualified and in over their heads, and both have failed miserably at their duties to run and ran their ships aground. And unfortunately, I do believe that analogy, Francesco Schettino and Barack Obama will be forever linked in terms of their abilities to steer the ship of state or any other kind of ship. And I'm sitting here with a grinning, grimacing perhaps, a Captain Fred.
Yeah, I think it's grimacing, not grinning so much, although I'm chuckling at that. And I would say this, having been the commanding officer of ships and the squadron commander of many ships at one point, the ultimate responsibility does lie with the captain, and which is why I said at the beginning of the show that my new hero is that Coast Guard captain that ordered the captain to get back onto his ship.
Yes.
Because that captain, unbelievably, upended the maritime tradition of the captain is always the last to leave the ship, because he is responsible, and the ultimate responsibility always lies with him.
Doesn't he, though, get at least a little credit, or not credit, but
for tripping into the lifeboat?
Doesn't he have a balance deficiency syndrome? And perhaps that's not his fault. Well, maybe that's what our president has, too. He's got a problem with balancing the budget and things of that sort. It's interesting. The ship of state and the terribly tragic ship sunk recently, but Mayor Steve Warmington now in today's paper is objecting to our Congressman Republican Bill Huizenga's position, trying to help give the Badger up there in Ludington a little breath of life in terms of their dropping the coal ash into the lake. And I give Steve credit. I mean, he's supporting his ferry boat across the lake. Unfortunately, we are now using the environment to stop our competitors, and it's life today. It's just sad. That's the way we are going. We just watched The Honey Bunch, and I watched Atlas Shrugged last night, the movie. And it was so awful to see what is going on today, and how much like the book Atlas Shrugged and the movie Atlas Shrugged is, as people who don't want competition utilize government and funky laws like environmental laws and racial laws and other gender laws to put their competitors out of business, or at least make it harder for them to make a living. And using, just transitioning to that, this past week, a gentleman who we're going to have as a guest next week, he is an ex-Muslim Brotherhood, ex-terrorist. He's now an American citizen traveling the country talking about the evils of Sharia law and extreme Islam. He's not an anti-Muslim, but he's talking about the extremes. He was invited to speak in the evening at Allegan High School. About 150 people down there had attended the event. And shortly after it began, when the people were sitting down, the police chief of the city of Allegan, if I have this correctly, went in and stopped the show from going on. And his reason was that he had recently heard that there was a $25 million bounty on the head of Kamal whatever his name was now. I should have it in front of me. Think about that. All you need to do to stop somebody from speaking is call the police chief and say, hey, there's a $25 million bounty on his head. There's government. There's a gentleman who I think has got a very serious, the police chief, serious problem making tough decisions. The interesting thing was they gathered afterwards, after he got everybody out of the building, they gathered at a bowling alley. And apparently the bowling alley was deemed okay for the terrorist attack to come. The police chief was not offended by that. But I would say this, we've talked about our president and his leadership in international affairs. The Arab Spring, which we've all heard so much about, in Egypt, they finally had the first round elections is over now, and they've elected their parliament. Almost 3/4 of the Egyptian parliament is the Islamist parties of the Islamic or of the Muslim Brotherhood, and believe it or not, an even more Islamic strict government or party. So,
well, and of course we've got our little hostage thing going on as well.
Yeah, and that's a son of a
son of LaHood, Ray LaHood, the transportation secretary.
Yeah, so that's what we get with a wonderful leader. And as Oscar's waving at me, we will be back.
Rewarding a student is a great way to build self-esteem, but those little expenses add up. Hi, this is Chris Daughtry. Each year, teachers spend over $400 of their own money on their students. DonorsChoose.org is an online charity that makes it easy for you to help students in need. Join Chase and Clear Channel communities in supporting DonorsChoose.org, where you will find hundreds of projects to help students build self-esteem. Thanks to the leadership of Chase, every dollar you donate will be matched up to $250,000. Go to DonorsChoose.org/Chase.
From Consumer Reports, choosing a cell plan. I'm Ernie Sprance. If you never or rarely access websites or email from your phone, using it almost exclusively for voice calls and probably texting, a basic plan with a limited number of minutes per month at a reasonable price should suit you fine. If you send and receive more than a couple dozen text messages per month and want to avoid overpaying a la carte, consider adding in a messaging bundle. As for the phone, choose a simple flip or slider-styled one, avoiding smartphones or so-called feature phones. Power users access the web or email at least 5 times a day or use apps including Facebook and other social networking tools. Those in this group are willing to spend $100 or more per month for fast, widespread coverage for their phone. A new top-of-the-line Android phone or iPhone allows for the widest selection of apps. If you're a family or couple that makes lots of voice calls and texts, often to one another, go for a family plan, mainly because it probably saves money compared with multiple single-line accounts. A major carrier that bills monthly will give you the widest choice of service with family savings. Because family needs can be diverse, no single model of phone may be suitable for everyone sharing the plan. That said, if the needs of several members are close enough, 2-for-1 phone sales can deliver substantial savings. I'm Ernie Sprance for Consumer Reports, online at consumerreports.org.
The Talk of Muskegon is News Talk 1090, WKBZ Muskegon, and heard 24 hours a day on WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC is turning up the heat and making it easy and affordable for you to drive home a new Chevrolet or GMC. Shop our 20-acre motor mall, and right now get 0 down and 0% on select models and 0 payments till spring. Plus, Benton is paying you top dollar for your trade guaranteed, up to 120% book value. We want and need your trade, even if you don't buy from us. Shop our giant 20-acre motor mall, over 1,000 vehicles. Pick your color and drive home a new Chevy Cruze, $139 a month or less. A new Silverado extended cab 4x4, $239 a month or less. Chevy Malibu, $168 a month or less. Or drive home the all-new 2012 Chevy Sonic, $12,999 or less. The time to buy is now, and the place to save is Benton. Hurry, shop today and save with Benton 0 down, 0% financing, and 0 payments till spring. Only at Benton Chevrolet Cadillac GMC's 20-acre motor mall on both sides of Henry Street, Muskegon, where Michigan shops GM.
Car number 7 is pulling into the pit.
Team, I want peak performance. Let's go over my diabetes checklist.
Start taking action now for diabetes.
Medication.
Got them. And my insulin supplies.
Exercise. Check. At least 30 minutes most days. Blood sugar level? On target.
Diet? Eating healthy.
And your A1C is under control.
Keeping your blood pressure and your cholesterol in the zone is also important.
Check. How am I doing?
Your numbers are looking good.
you're good to go.
Thanks, team.
Whoa, look at number 7, racing out of the pit.
Managing diabetes, including controlling blood sugar, is a team effort. Keeping your body at its peak performance requires a plan that's right for you. Take the wheel and start taking action now for diabetes. For more information, visit standfordiabetes.org. That's standfordiabetes.org.
A public service of TCOID made possible with support from Sanofi Aventis US.
A message from Liam Neeson, Orlando Bloom, Lawrence Fishburne, Salma Hayek, Mia Farrow, and Téa Leoni.
They do not have to die, but they do. 24,000 children every day.
They die for reasons we can prevent.
Like not getting enough food or medicine or clean, safe water to drink.
24,000 children every day.
But we are gaining ground. A generation ago, twice as many children were dying.
Still, 24,000 every day?
They do not have to die, but they do.
They die because they are young and vulnerable.
They die because through no fault of their own, they're poor.
24,000 children.
24,000 children.
24,000 children every day? My name is Téa Leoni.
My name is Salma Hayek.
My name is Orlando Bloom.
My name is Mia Farrow.
My name is Lawrence Fishburne.
My name is Liam Neeson, and I believe that number should be 0. Believe in 0.
Join the effort. Visit unicefusa.org.
Good morning, it's Sunday. Good morning, it's Sunday, January 29th, and here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. A 50% chance of some snow showers this morning with most of the cloudy skies. Otherwise, a high of 29, and northwest winds 15 to 25. Clouds will break up a little bit tonight. It'll be partly cloudy, low around 25. Tomorrow, we'll start off with some sleet or freezing rain. Otherwise, a chance of some flurries or snow showers throughout the day. Warmer with a high up to 40 tomorrow, and then partly cloudy tomorrow night, a low of 36. News Talk 1090, the Talk of Muskegon.
Thanks, honey.
You're welcome.
My husband needed a CT scan to check his heart. Turns out he's fine, but talk of radiation in the news made me a little concerned. So I asked our doctor, how will this exam improve his care? Are there alternative tests that don't use radiation? And is the facility accredited for quality and safety? Our doctor told me if you need a scan, the benefits outweigh any risk.
If you're concerned about radiation, ask your doctor and get the facts at imagewisely.org.
Is the Talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes.
And we are back. EyeOn Muskegon. Here in Muskegon, Michigan, we are talking about, or at least we are about to talk about, municipal transparency and honesty. Are our elected leaders at the state level, at the county, city, township, school board level, are they transparent? Are they letting us know what's going on? Are they honest? I mentioned the word sophistry. Sophistry is essentially a half-truth. An example, Fred helped me out here. I should have thought of this. What's a good example of sophistry? Well, a sophistry would be actually touting the fact that the unemployment rate is down and things are getting better here in Muskegon County, when in fact the opposite is true. The mathematics are there that the numbers are down, but the facts are that people actually working are down significantly. And so when you say a sophistry, you're telling somebody a half-truth that makes them think something that you know is the opposite of the truth. And the reason I wanted to talk about transparency is that we are finding now that our state needs more money, that our townships, counties, cities are telling us either they need more money now or they're going to need it soon. I believe Governor Snyder last week, and I'm not faulting him here, but he announced that some plans of increased gasoline taxes, car registration fees, and I believe there's a third one there that, according to the television report I saw, will increase the average person's annual taxes about $125. And that in and of itself is not going to break most people. It might break some people. But these, it's only going to cost $40 for the average homeowner for this millage increase and $125 for the average homeowner for that one. In other words, these things all start to add up. And the question is, well, why did we get into a position where everybody's out of money? Because we know that the state and most of our communities are not hemorrhaging money, and they're not having serious declines in their revenues. They're just not getting massive increases like they've been used to. So I just, as an example, I was looking at the Department of Energy just came out yesterday, perhaps in response to the president's visit, and said it's going to reinstate some of Flint's $1.1 million energy efficiency grant. And what had happened was that there was very serious questions as to what had gone on in Flint, where the money was going. Officials from the Energy Department found, quote, the city failed to follow procurement standards as well as conflicts of interest and serious lack of attention to grant requirements, and on and on and on. So here we have a city that's broke. That's their schools and the police and the rest of it are a disaster. They get $1.1 million in energy efficiency grants, which interestingly are supposed to be used towards curbside recycling, replacement of windows and climate control in city buildings, which will pay energy savings, which will benefit the city for years to come.
But, you shouldn't be too surprised at any of this. Over the last however many years, people were taking the stimulus money to make the state budgets well. People were taking the stimulus money to put it into the local governments in order to make them well. People were moving money around, all of these different kinds of things. What amazes me more than anything is that when I was in charge of large organizations in the government, I was required to meet with my comptroller. Not because I love comptrollers, but I was meeting with my comptroller on a weekly basis, on a routine basis, in order to look at the numbers. And I had budget forecasts out 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 7 years, all of those budget forecasts so that I could see exactly what was going on. And if the change in the budgetary controls, the money that was coming into the organization, changed, we were almost immediate in making the changes that we needed to make in the organization to keep it going afloat. And so I find it astonishing that these budgets are obviously not being reviewed correctly by our elected officials, because if they were, they would be making these changes. Or if they are being reviewed, then they aren't expressing the issues to the people very well.
Well, okay, let's bring that home here to what ought to be a front page story every single day, and that, of course, is the terrible tragedy that's happening in Muskegon Heights with the school system just dissolving. Virtually every day there is new news, and there was an announcement just this past week that the 1,407 students of the Muskegon Heights school system were, at least this was a suggestion, were going to be somehow apportioned out and dumped. I think that's maybe the operative word, dumped on other school systems, most of which are full and say that they don't really have the ability to take them. So we have the tragedy of young people who are expecting an education. That is a right in this country as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I think most people are concerned. And they're being disrupted. As tough as it is to be a student in that system, it's just gotten a lot tougher.
Yeah, but are they really being taught properly there anyway? So. Well,
that may be, and there are arguments, but the question simply is this. Anybody who knows anything about that school system knew that they'd had problems years ago, decades ago. There have been investigations going back. I recall this maybe 20-plus years ago. There was a huge investigation of shadow employees, and they brought in a school superintendent, a woman, a single mom who had 2 children, I believe it was, apparently very competent. She saw what was going on. She said, I can fix this. And her house was firebombed twice. She left, apparently, right in the middle of her term, right. After the second firebombing. So we've known about this. Where are the people at the state level, at the local levels, telling us that this was coming on? And we got to do something to keep it from hitting the rocks, Captain.
Well, first off, I certainly hope that I'm not going to be in the secondary casualty line around you, Jim, if you're throwing these things out on the air about firebombing and that type of stuff. But the bottom line, you're looking at me askance, but you're bringing up unpleasant things to an audience, and even if it's the truth, there are going to be people that are upset when you speak the truth. But let's look at this now from a realistic perspective. It seems that our officials can't even get their stories straight. I mean, I have seen stories in the news that they are in debt anywhere between $3 and $12 million. Now, to some government agencies, that's not a very large number, but to the Muskegon Heights school system, that is a huge number. 3 to 12 million, a differential of $9 million. They should be able to pinpoint, this is what I was saying about the budgets, they should be able to pinpoint exactly how much money they are in debt to the penny on a weekly basis with no questions asked.
Well, let's stop right there if I can, because I wrote down some of the numbers. Apparently, for the 2009-2010, and these are numbers I've gotten generated primarily from the Muskegon Chronicle on M Live, but for 2009-2010, an article written not very long ago was that they were $4.2 million in the hole. An article written in January earlier this year said that they were $8.5 million in the hole, and an article just written just recently says that they are now $12 million in the hole. Now, we know that these expenses, they didn't go out and buy Ferraris and private jets.
Well, at least we don't think they did.
Well, that's true. That's possible. Somebody might have been doing that. But we know it's more the fact that nobody really was being transparent. Nobody was doing what you said, meeting with a controller. Nobody had a clue what was going on in this school system.
Well, I'm not going to go so far as to say that. There are probably people that did have a clue of what was going on.
Maybe not nobody.
But this transparency thing cuts three ways. There's a responsibility for public officials to be transparent, to produce the budgets, to provide the information, and to get it out to the people. That assumes that we have a press, a news organizations that are willing to present the information to the people. And then number three, the people themselves have a responsibility that when that information is provided to them, that they actually take action and to demand the changes or to make the changes in the public officials or do what has to be done. There is an oversight responsibility of the populace. And I'm sorry, Ozzy.
Well, I'm just saying that the one problem with the people taking responsibility, when I lived in Muskegon Heights 25 years ago, the people tried to take responsibility and nothing happened. Nothing was done. Nothing was,
Right, and I can understand it. And I understand
and I'm sure it's worse now. But anyway.
I certainly understand the frustrations. But the second part of this, and this is amazing to me. We're talking about, right now they're going to privatize the bus system. They're going to privatize. They've already privatized the cafeteria piece. They're going to privatize the maintenance. They are already taking assistance from other school systems for maintenance stuff, which I think is a fantastic thing that those folks actually did that they went in to help the Heights schools do the maintenance and stuff. But the issue here is that the largest portion of their budgets is in personnel. I mean, I don't think anybody can say otherwise.
Probably 80%, yeah.
It's a very large part.
It's wages, it's pensions, it's post-employment benefits, health care, that kind of thing.
But let's remember something, okay? It's a tragedy for all of these folks that are having their jobs prioritized. They can go out and they can apply for the jobs with the private firms, all of these different things. Certainly the teachers are upset. They don't know whether they're going to have jobs next year. They don't know whether they're going to be paid. The superintendent has already said he's not even sure they can make payroll. He said that he wants to make sure that they can make payroll in the March timeframe, which, as I understand it, is the drop-dead time on all of these different kinds of things. But look at this. Now, we have to remember one thing. What is the mission of the school? The mission of the school is not to provide high-paying jobs. It's not to provide teachers with work. It is not to have administrators. It's not to have contracts with textbooks people. It's not to have sports teams. It is to educate the children and to provide them with an education that they can use in order to go out and be productive citizens. And we have, to some degree, lost sight of that.
Can I give an anecdote just about the loss of sight of really the main
Sure,
reason?
You're allowed to do anything.
You're the man.
That's true, but if I hit you on the head with a baseball bat, that'd end the show quickly. A friend of mine whose wife is in the school system in the county, not in the Heights, but in the county, has been told recently by, I would imagine, the superintendent or the principal, that it's either kindergarten or preschool. I believe it's kindergarten. That she must now open up every kid's little food that they bring in. The kids bring food for snacks and that type of thing, to make sure that there is no peanut or peanut-like food in their little bags of treats because of the possibility of a child having a peanut allergy. Now, certainly, I can understand, that there are peanut allergies, and they are in some cases deadly. But this is just another job where the teacher is supposed to be teaching. Another additional thing that she has been told that she must do is go through all these kids, and you can imagine that's not an easy thing with a bunch of kindergartners. And it made me think, number one, that, of course, here we're adding more and more of these things. I mean, that's, I'm sure, one of probably 20 or 50 or who knows, maybe 100 things that these teachers have to do. But why, when we were children, why were not kids dropping like flies from peanut allergies? I mean, every kid in school had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
I think that's a rhetorical question, but let me respond to that a little bit, Jim. In the military, this is what we call mission creep. Okay?
Ooh.
It is going beyond what the actual mission is. All of a sudden, for example, the Navy is now at the forefront of biofuel usage.
Yeah.
That's called mission creep.
Explain that.
The reason, the Navy is now going to start to run some of their ships on biofuels, which costs more than the normal fuel,
Way
more than the fossil fuels. And we're doing it in order to further the environmental, agenda along the government lines. Well, that's not the purpose of the Navy. The Navy's purpose is very, very straightforward. It is to protect the sea lanes. It is to provide a forward presence, and it is to protect the homeland. That's what the Navy is out there to do. And when you add these other things in, like checking for peanuts, making sure that kids under the age of 5 have an opportunity to be in daycare of some sort, or all of these different things that we have laid on our schools, that's called mission creep. Mission creep costs money.
Right.
And when you do that, you start to get away from the overall mission. And the overall mission is to educate those kids so that they can be productive citizens.
Plus, the hand has been taken away, too, as far as any discipline whatsoever. There is no discipline allowed in schools at all anymore.
That's another thing that's been dropped on the teachers.
Right.
They're the frontline soldiers in this battle, if you will. And again, this goes back to my interest in transparency and honesty. Every one of these mission creeps has a cost at some point, and no one is honestly looking at the ultimate costs of all these good kumbaya, let's all have a group hug type plans. Now, I want to go back to the Heights, though, for a sec, because, again, I thought a pretty well-written article in the Chronicle here mentioned that the school board in the Muskegon Heights voted to privatize bus drivers, custodians, clerical workers, saving the district $300-some thousand for the rest of the year. And $925,000, almost $1 million for next year. Now, think about this. If they had done this just a few years ago, if you can save $925,000 by privatizing, now, I would imagine essentially keeping the same services, getting the same, the school's going to be clean and the buses are going to run and the clerical workers are going to cleric. In fact, you can save this kind of money. Why are we constantly being faced with, oops, nobody, no different than the captain of the Costa Contadina, it's a different name, but where no one's interested in doing anything until we've hit the rocks, until the ship is sinking, and the kids are, in this case, are out there in life jackets.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is, as I said, the mission is not to provide those jobs. The mission is to educate those children. And so whatever has to be done, we have to make sure that comes first. In the Army, they call it unity of command. It means that every person in the command understands what the mission is. And so that if you end up taking casualties, even the lowliest soldier still knows that he has to take Pork Chop Hill. And so what you want to do is you want to instill this unity of command throughout the organization and to slough off all this other stuff, all this mission creep, so that people understand what is actually important in what they're doing. Now, those are difficult things to install and to instill. So I'm not saying that this is something that can be turned over at night. I mean, if I was in charge of the Muskegon Heights School, I'd be flopping around just like anybody else, okay, at this point. But those are the types of things that you have to move towards in the future. And in order to do that, you have to have this transparency that we were talking about. Every person needs to understand what that mission is, and every person has to agree that that's what the mission is, and then they all have to strive towards that one goal.
Isn't that part of the problem with Muskegon Heights schools, though, too, is that a lot of times people do go there with these issues and try to deal with them, and they just give up because they get nowhere. They give up. I know a good group of people there that have just given up.
Well, I think it's even worse because, as you said, you used to live in the Heights, and the problem that the Heights does face, of course, in other cities, Detroit, Flint, others in similar circumstances, where the people that do have the wherewithal that might have affected real change have said, I'm tired of butting my head up against this particular establishment, I'm just going to move away. The ultimate result of that, though, is that the rest of society, the rest of our community, the taxpayers, the children, the teachers. I know that there are retired Muskegon Heights teachers who have been promised. They contractually they made agreements to, in some cases, retire early for various benefits and other things. You do this or you retire early, we'll give you that. Those contracts are going to be violated. What happens is when there is no transparency, there's no responsibility, and apparently there is really no true honesty here. Because if in fact they can save $1 million a year just in privatizing something, there were some answers out there that were not even brought up. Then the result is this kind of a disaster.
This is why I often say that anybody that works for these organizations, anybody that is retired from these organizations, should be voting for not for the conservative in this case, but the fiscal conservative, the fiscal responsibility candidates, because that's the only way that we are going to be able to honor our commitments, not only to the children but to the contracts that we actually had. Because if you continually just grow this mission, have this mission creep and this continuous outgrowing of good jobs for everybody type of a thing, ultimately this is what happens, and then contracts can't be honored in the future.
Well, and you can't just move away, even though you might be able to move out of a disastrous city like a Detroit or in this case, a school system.
We cannot afford to lose this fight in Muskegon Heights. We can't let that segment of the population not be educated. We have an obligation. We not only have an obligation and a responsibility, but it is in our best interest to make sure that those children are educated properly.
Let me tell you, there's any number of reasons why we must attend to what you just said, which is the mission, which is educating the children. But even if you move out of the system, even if you get your kid out of the system and you've got your own child educated, you're still going to be paying because of this disaster. This $12 million in the hole, it's got to be picked up by the taxpayers or someone else. But you mentioned something about focusing on Pork Chop Hill. We're going to take Pork Chop Hill. We've got a specific goal. Here's the situation, and I certainly don't blame the surrounding school systems because they're worried about getting all these children dumped on them. They don't have the room or anything else. In the middle of the year, they're at different levels, learning their arithmetic and their math and
what's the alternative? To ask them to give a portion of their budget to Muskegon Heights?
Well, that's the question that they don't know. But here's the Fruitport Community School superintendent said that he believes many school districts will step up to the plate, support the Heights, support these children, do whatever we can. That's standard boilerplate for, I have no idea. But here's what he does say, which does make me nervous. He says the primary focus, he said, would be keeping Muskegon Heights, quote, viable. Now, I'm assuming he's talking about, at least in the article, the Muskegon Heights school system. That is not the primary focus, as far as you suggest, as far as I would agree. And unless you're going to focus on the children, rather than keeping Muskegon Heights school system and its union employees and its vendors and everyone else viable, those are two in many cases that we're finding out conflicting foci, if you will. And our good buddy is Roger is telling us that we've got to take a break. So we will take a break, and we will foci or focus on transparency when we come back.
Attention area car buyers! It's our first sale of the year at Great Lakes Lakes Ford Lincoln in Muskegon. Make winter driving fun and just go in the snow in a new 2012 Ford Edge, Escape, Explorer, Expedition, and F-Series pickup, or a Lincoln MKX, MKZ, Navigator, or MKT, all slash up to $9 grand off. $9 grand off now at Great Lakes Ford. Looking for pre-owned? Get an 08 Ford Escape 4x4 for just $229 a month with zero down. An 05 F-150 Super Crew XLT with just 62,000 miles, or an 09 Ford Taurus all-wheel drive. Your choice, just $239 a month with zero down. Plus, make no payments till spring. For credit, call 231-777-2750. And we want your trade-in. It's our first sale of the year. But hurry, it all ends soon at Great Lakes Ford Lincoln in Muskegon, the dealer you can trust.
Discount from MSRP, 4.99% APR, 72 months plus tax and fees with qualified credit rebates included, subject to prior sales. See dealer for details.
At Home with Gary Sullivan.
I did some staining of my deck, and some got on concrete. Is there anything that could beat that away?
Well, it's kind of tough because that stain penetrates concrete similar to the way it penetrates wood. Do you have a pressure washer?
Oh, yeah.
Put paint stripper or a deck stripper on there, let it sit. It'll tell you how long to let it sit because it depends on the type you use. And then hit it with a pressure washer and see if that takes care of it.
Catch the show Sunday afternoons at 6 on News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon.
I can solve difficult problems for a Fortune 500 company.
I can run a successful business. I can put my military experience to work for your company.
I can manage your home improvements.
I can publicize your message.
I can teach your children.
But I can't put my skills to work for your organization
if I'm not given the opportunity.
Nearly 50 million Americans have disabilities. Capitalize on their talents with employment practices that benefit everyone. Learn more at whatcanyoudocampaign.org.
The talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090 WKBZ.
Well, you dadgum government, you saw it so-and-so's. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well,
and we're back. Eye on Muskegon, Muskegon's top-rated political talk radio show with Captain Fred Birch and the legendary Oscar Osbo and myself, Jim Riley. We're talking about transparency, honesty. Our governments, who we do charge, in many cases, we compensate our government officials, school board, maybe not school board members, but certainly the school employees. The other elected officials are relatively well compensated, but far more important is we charge them and give them authority and responsibility to look out for us. And for too long, I think, in this country, we have trusted that great-looking man with the deep voice who we've elected to be senator or governor or mayor or what have you is going to do what's best for the community. And in some cases they do. But in far too many cases, as we're finding, that they're allowing the ship that they are the captain of to end up on the rocks. And we're talking about the Heights. And it's not impending doom. It's already hit the rocks. It's already tilted over to the side, and it apparently is not going to be resurrected, certainly in its current form.
Yeah, there aren't any lifeboats left.
And sadly, the
captain left a long time ago too.
Well, the only lifeboats that are available are to somehow push these kids someplace else, and or what may very well be the answer. And to me, this is more frightening maybe than anything, is just another tsunami of money. Write a big check, clear the books, keep the same people that drove that ship onto the rocks, keep them in charge forever. Pretty much as what has been done with the city of Detroit for the last multiple decades anyway. But since you can't just move away from a situation in order to escape it, at least escape the results, which in the case is going to be more money will have to be spent somehow. Someone's got to make up the $12 million. Even if you move to Norton Shores or you move to Kent County, the state's going to pick up the difference. So there is a responsibility.
But who could afford to do that? Because that one of the things when I lived in the Muskegon Heights was the rent. I was renting at that time. I could rent a house for a 3-bedroom house for $270. I'm sure it's cheaper than that now, but I could rent a 3-bedroom house for $270. And I moved over to Norton Shores, and I was paying $750.
Well, you're right that many people can't, but many people have. They have moved away because of, for whatever reason, and I'm not just talking about the Heights, but the point is you can move away, but you cannot escape the ultimate cost of the mistakes.
Yeah, the bills are still going to arrive.
The bills are going to arrive. The kids may arrive in your schools. They may be disruptive because, again, they're at different levels. There's any number of reasons why you're going to pay no matter where you moved. And then the question is, then, where is the transparency? Who in fact, does have the responsibility above and beyond? Well, I would say, obviously, the school board and the school system itself. This one seems to be, in a mess. All right, the county. Certainly, they don't have a responsibility. Our county commissioners don't have a responsibility. This, but they do have the bully pulpit. They do have the ability to look. Could any one of them have said something?
Well,
in years gone by?
Like I was saying before, all of the citizens, but particularly the county board, do have a responsibility for oversight. And that doesn't mean that they necessarily have the specific or regulatory responsibility, but they have the citizen responsibility of providing that oversight to make sure that we are doing things correctly.
You might call it leadership.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, okay, let's. So there's the county. Certainly, the leaders of the city of Muskegon Heights had a responsibility. They're right there. They see it. I didn't hear any of them saying, "Hey, there's an iceberg ahead," or "There's a whole bunch of rocks ahead." But now we're at a point. Now that we've hit the rocks, who's going to be involved? Well, we have two local state representatives, Marcia Hovey-Wright and Holly Hughes, and we have our state Senator Jeff Hansen. They, along with the governor, are going to be deciding how much money gets shuffled into this school system and really what's going to happen, because ultimately this emergency manager is going to step in and make some very significant and I'm sure expensive decisions. So I would suggest that everybody get on the phone on Monday and call your state rep and your state senator, and in this case it would be Representative or Senator Jeff Hansen, and ask them, not so much, it's your fault, I'm blaming you, why didn't you help us, but I'd get on the phone and let them know that you're interested in, and you realize that they have power in this, and say, what are you going to do about this? Would you please put me on your email list and get back with me, because this is a disaster, and I want to not so much hear what your answer is to how you're going to fix it. What are you going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important also to re-engage with the media around this area to ensure that they are actually producing and providing the information that people need. Because unlike Jim says that there are many exhaustive articles on this, my opinion is that this has not been covered nearly enough.
Let's swoop
People
it away.
should be well informed of all of these different things that are going on. And yet this morning I picked up the newspaper specifically to take a look and see if there was anything in there about about this subject, and there wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was bringing up about the whole rent thing, is that you can get a place there for next to nothing. You can buy a house there for next to nothing for $10. I'm serious. There's some houses you could actually buy over there for $10 that have been ransacked, and they were drug houses. But isn't that the problem? I mean, don't we have to rebuild Muskegon Heights to rebuild the school?
Well, again, if that is the answer that's going to be promulgated by someone, then before we just get that tsunami of cash dumping all over there, we ought to find out the plan, because therein lies, to me, the biggest problem with politics, with human beings. Doesn't matter what country you're in. The easy answer always is to show that you care. You're going to take money from someone else, and you're going to give it to somebody who you deem to be more worthy of it.
Because obviously giving it to the school hasn't worked. I mean, we've been doing. I lived there 28 years ago, and it didn't work then.
Well,
why is it going to work now?
You cannot blame budget cuts, for example, because there are plenty of schools in Michigan that had the same budget cuts that are not in this specific condition. They may have issues, but they are not in this kind of condition. So it's not budget cuts. This has been going on for a significant amount of period. There is a significant amount of rot from the inside in this particular situation. And as Jim says, we need to figure out How do you cut that rot out if you are going to make this viable again?
Right.
Well, this is what transparency is all about. It's easy to understand reports. I would imagine, and I have no information on this at all, but it wouldn't surprise me that either there's a problem with the auditing company that audited the Heights, or probably much more likely the information that the company was given might have been not accurate, maybe through sloth, maybe through nefarious reasons. But this is what transparency and honesty is about. If you know where you're going, looking down the road, then you're not going to hit the rocks. I would just give an example, two things that, now changing the subject, or at least the particular subject, from Muskegon Heights to the county of Muskegon. On their first meeting of 2012, January 4th of this year, they passed two policies, and I've talked about them a little bit, but I really want to focus, because this is an example of what government can do to avoid transparency, avoid honesty, avoid the eye of the interested citizen in getting the truth. The first thing that they did was they, quote, any claim brought against the county involving sums of less than $10,000 may be settled by the administrator consistent with the procedure below, which essentially says if you get the okay of the county chairman, it does not have to be discussed at a meeting at any level. They can just say, okay, fine, sign it away. In other words, if the county gets sued and the settlement is $9,999.99, the county administrator and the county chairman can just say, okay, pay them and get rid of them. Now, that might be a way to save a little bit of time from the county commissioner meetings. One, which was last week, I believe, was 6 minutes, was the entire meeting. They're not overworked over there, at least certainly at meeting time. Right. But this is more of the shadow, the underground government. We don't want you to know that we're getting sued a lot. I don't know if they're getting sued a lot or not. But I know that we're going to know a lot less. And not only that, the county commissioners aren't going to be even having a discussion, so they won't even know. At the same meeting, they had another policy. County administrator, prior to engaging in spending under this policy in amounts of excess of $1,000 but no more than $10,000, will consult with and fully apprise county board chair of the purpose of the proposed expenditure. So in other words, they've just bumped the ability to spend money from $1,000 to $10,000. Bingo. No mention, no notification to the county commissioners prior to the spending. There is some little deal that says within 30 days the county commissioners will get in their giant pile of information some cryptic thing that will not tell them what it was really spent about.
And these were voted on by the commissioners themselves.
11 to 1, 11 to 1. Bing, bing, bing.
Oh, gee, I wonder who that one person was.
No, I'm sorry. No, 11-0, 11-0.
11-0.
Yes, they were. Thank you. This is the kind of thing, what we're seeing at a time when we really need more citizen input, when we really need more transparency, and frankly, I'd say honesty. We are getting a pushback big time from governments, and I'm sure the poor folks like you experienced, Oscar, in the Heights, who were out there saying, "Hey, I'd like to be involved. I'd like to find out what's going on." They were getting pushback too.
Oh yeah. That's the other thing too. You think about that too. Is this kind of like like we were before? People who are afraid of unions. Are they afraid of Muskegon Heights because it's not a real friendly atmosphere as far as some of the things that go on in Muskegon Heights? I mean, there's a lot of drugs there. We all know that, and a lot of us won't go down there because of that reason. I mean, is that the problem right there? Is that are the drug dealers paying off the people they need to pay off to keep things quiet and keep the Heights the way it is? I'm just. Well, just throwing it out there. I don't know.
There's no evidence to that.
No.
But somehow $12 million has disappeared.
Right.
I mean, it didn't just poof up in the sky.
That's what I'm saying. All this money disappears, and then nobody seems to know anything about it. Why? Why?
Hey, I'd like to change the subject here to one that's even more exciting than our, really, the poor children, the poor teachers, the other employees, the taxpayers. It's a disaster. We've got to be looking not just to fix this, but to find out how we got to where we are. And another giant iceberg ahead of the good ship Muskegon, let's see, what would we call it? The SS Muskegon, is the possibility or the likelihood that we're going to need a county jail. And as you said, Fred, the number one
mission.
The number one mission or the number one item priority for 2012, as voted on by the county leaders, was that
I got a couple of comments just about that. The fact that we now have a number one priority of the jail. First off, who are these people? Are they talking to the folks out in Muskegon? Do they not understand that? We have this large unemployment problem, that we need to attract businesses, that we need to have things come in. And should that not be the primary mission at this point of the county? That's number one.
Okay, wait, what you're saying is that the most important thing that the county leaders... Skewed. Okay, their number one mission is the jail, and you're suggesting there are other things that might be more important.
Just maybe, might be. I would even be ecstatic if they would say the number one mission of the county board is to provide services for the people. That would satisfy me.
I don't think that was on the list. Even.
No, then that's the problem, in my opinion. But the second thing is that we've been talking about this business with Muskegon Heights and what the hell happened to all the money. Excuse me, I shouldn't say those kinds of things.
You can say that.
But what happened to all this money out there? Well, what has happened to the maintenance money for the jail that we have over the last 10 years? Has that maintenance money been spent wisely in maintaining what we have?
There are allegations by some that, in fact, the jail has been purposely let to go in some level of disrepair in order to convince folks that it needs to be replaced. Now, that's an allegation that I have not seen has been supported.
That's true. That's an allegation,
but it is very true that it is. Well, and I've heard it from more than one person who does know something.
I would just like to say, as a guy that was involved in Washington D.C. for a number of years, and a guy that was involved in the federal government for a number of years, where I was dealing with money, that the first indication that you can tell when somebody is going to put a sock over your head and hit you in the eye and rob you blind is when they hire a consulting company, okay, to tell you that what you want to do is the right thing to do. So not only do we get hit with consulting fees, which I thought we were actually paying the board members some unbelievable amount of money for going to meetings every 6 minutes.
About $40,000 a year.
6 minutes every 2 weeks.
To support each county commissioner.
They're paying a whole mess of money out here to a bunch of people to tell them what to do. Well, give me a break.
Okay, this leads me back to the discussion of the jail.
I agree 100%. That's a problem.
Well, again, we do compensate them, but far more importantly, we give them responsibility, but we give them the authority.
What are their credentials? That's what I want to know. I've never seen any decent credentials of some of these people that they've hired.
But who elects them? You mean the consultants?
Consultants, yeah.
Actually, believe it or not, the few consultants that I've seen that have been hired have done to my way of thinking, a relatively good job. Here's the problem. Number one, as Fred said, why are we hiring consultants to make the decisions that these county commissioners are actually paid to do? Because again, we do compensate them, we give them responsibility, which is nice, but far more importantly, we give them authority. In other words, they can do things that the rest of us mere mortal, normal human beings cannot do. We don't have the authority. All right, and this is why you've got to educate yourself when election time comes. But they made a decision to make the purchase or renovation or whatever, to spend a whole pile of money. We're talking anywhere between, 10 and 35, who knows, even more $1 million. That's an awful lot of money for our county. But one of the things that was brought up, and this was brought up by Commissioner Marv Engel numerous times in this planning session, was that we need to educate the public. And he brought it up many times. Certainly the spirit of his comments was echoed. Another person at that meeting suggested after the meeting, he said they don't want to educate the public. They want to indoctrinate the public. And we will come back and talk about that a little bit, because the consultants' reports have been paid for, but they're not public. So let's talk about where your tax dollars are going when we come back from break.
Car number 7 is pulling into the pit.
What's my winning diabetes plan?
Start taking action now for diabetes. Medications.
Got them. And my insulin supplies.
Exercise.
Most days.
Blood sugar level?
On target.
Diet?
Eating healthy.
A1C?
Under control.
Managing diabetes, including controlling blood sugar, is a team effort that requires a plan that's right for you. For more information, visit standfordiabetes.org.
A public service of TCOYD made possible with support from Sanofi Aventis US.
Fox News Radio, I'm Liz White. Herman Cain announces his pick for president.
I hereby officially and enthusiastically endorse Newt Gingrich for president of the United States.
The former GOP presidential candidate had a fundraiser in West Palm Beach last night. Gingrich welcomed the endorsement and said he'll continue all the way to the convention, even if he loses the Florida primary. Mitt Romney's been polling ahead. Rick Santorum canceled events with his daughter in the hospital. About 200 arrests in Occupy Oakland protests last night after a day of demonstrations.
Other demonstrators were arrested in the afternoon after police said they threw rocks, bottles, and other objects at officers and tore down fencing.
Fox Radio's Salgie Ingrosso, dozens of police maintained a late-night guard around City Hall after some demonstrators broke into the building earlier in the day. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Good morning. Here's the official News Talk 1090 WKBZ forecast. We'll start off with mostly cloudy skies and a chance of snow showers this morning with a high of 29. Northwest winds 15 to 25. It'll be partly cloudy tonight, a low around 25. West winds 10 to 20. Some sleet or freezing rain possible early tomorrow. Otherwise scattered flurries and snow showers at a high around 40. Southeast winds 15 to 25. And just cloudy skies on Tuesday with a high of 42. News Talk 1090. The Talk of Muskegon.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes.
Okay, it's sadly, it's probably more interesting, and it most certainly is more fun when we're off air than when we're on air. Apparently, I guess to the gentleman who just changed his name, Oscar has left the building. So we if you're,
no, I didn't leave the building. Really, I didn't. No.
If you're coming after Oscar, he's gone. We are again talking about transparency, honesty, sophistry. There was, I thought, a very good article, editorial written by Paula Holmes Greeley of the Chronicle not too long ago, talking about, well, the headline is Rebuilding Muskegon Lawmakers Need to Keep an Eye on Development Funds for West Michigan. And what caught my attention was, well, I'll just read it here. Tax incentives often were created to attract new businesses to the state in an attempt to reduce the state's reliance on auto industry jobs, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, so many tax incentives had been created in the state that the system was unsustainable. The amount of taxes being excused in future years was greater than the amount expected to be collected, and that's no way to generate future economic development, which, frankly, as much as I respect and really, truly do like Paula, I was shocked that she would have written that, because that comes right out of the Tea Party handbook, where you can't just keep giving things away forever. Sustainability, which is the favorite word of the Enviro left, also is a favorite word of the Tea Party right, which is you've got to be economically sustainable or it's going to collapse on your face. And there's an example here of, this was an article in the Chronicle also, talking about giving a tax abatement to Bayview Towers. And I won't get into the details here, but 25 years ago or so, 33 years later, they say, they gave a tax abatement to this low-income high-rise in downtown Muskegon. And now they're talking about keeping it up again. Now, for some reason, and I don't quite understand this, they want to move it from 25 years, the abatement, to 40 years. I can understand why the receivers of the money want that. But the city, and at least some people on the board, are saying, well, geez, we're not getting any taxes from this. They've got new owners, and the new owners are saying, well, if we don't get a tax break, we can't fix up the building. So in other words, the taxpayers of Muskegon, in lieu of getting the taxes that this profit-making organization that owns it is going to get, are being horse-wangled, swindled into agreeing on to not necessarily paying, but in lieu of getting taxes from an outfit, from a building that uses
we're essentially going to pay for their repairs.
Exactly. And at least the Chronicle article is reasonably well written. But where is the transparency here? Where is the as we're finding out now, we're going to give these guys a tax break for possibly 40 years? The city is telling us that they're out of money for things down the road anyway, for police and others. The same thing with the county tells us we're out of money, and yet they're spending these things without any look back. But I did want to get back, because we are tight for time, on these consultants for the prison. It's my understanding that there have been at least 3, perhaps as many as 5 or 6, or who knows, possibly even more, consultant reports that have been put together for the jail. Some of the commissioners...
Didn't like the first 4?
In many cases, they probably did not. The most recent one, which I found really offensive to me as a taxpayer, was they hired a consultant who ultimately came in, and if I read it correctly, I didn't read the report, but if I read the synopsis, was that they said that the prison would be the best of all the choices. But they were specifically told, the consultants were specifically told, that they could not address privatization or having the prisoners put in other county jails. In other words, which is, by the way, which is allowed under the state rules. So what we have, as one of the people at the meeting said, we have on one hand the leaders of our county saying we need to educate the public, but really what they want to do is indoctrinate the public. They don't want the public to see these consultant reports. I would like to see them. I'd like to see the amount paid on these consultant reports.
Yeah, I think again, we need to understand that transparency is not a specific set of things that is released by the government. Transparency means that you see all of the government machinations, whether it's within the bureaucracy or it's at the board level or all of those different kinds of things. And the problem is that when you start to talk about, as you said, we want to educate the public, what you're doing is you're picking and choosing what you want to tell the public. The public should know everything that is going on and see everything that is going on within the machinery of government to the extent that they want to. And we rely upon that media out there, the newspapers, the radio shows, the bloggers, everybody, to dig into these things and to give us that information. We need that from those folks. And then, of course, we need that concerned citizenry to actually rise up and start to take action.
Well, we do, and that's one of the reasons for this show. Please let folks know about it. Matter of fact, I want to talk a little bit. We're running out of time here. I keep telling folks that you can listen to the show on the podcast and the radio and the internet and everything else. But one thing that's important to understand is it's easiest, obviously, to listen to us every Sunday, AM 1090 on WKBZ, but there are other ways to listen. We've got live streaming. If you go to News Talk 1090, that's newstalk1090.com, you can click the iHeartRadio button, and you can listen to the show live any place in the country. So if you've got if you're on vacation or whatever, you want to listen, you can listen that way on your computer, and you can do that on your smartphone also. If you want to listen to the recording of the show, go to EyeOnMuskegon.com. That's EyeON Muskegon.com, and I post a full YouTube link of the show. Usually in the afternoon on Sunday, so you can listen to the show 24/7. You can listen to the old shows. Plus, we are now, thank you, Oscar, we are now on Comcast TV, 397, channel 397, every Monday evening, primetime, baby, from 8 to 9:30, and that is our local WMKG, which is TV 38.
Right.
But if you're on Comcast, if you've got rabbit ears, I guess you go to TV 38.
Right.
If you've got Comcast, you
Some
go to
people
channel. Channel 397. And immediately following our show, of course, is your fantastic show.
Reminiscing.
Give it a little, talk a little bit more.
Well, you got no time, so but anyway, it's a great show. It's a great show.
Okay,
we talked about you too, by the way. We like your show too.
Well, there we go. Let me let's see a few other things here. Well, I'll thank you guys, both Oscar, Fred, and of course the entire crew of KBZ. I get yelled at by people for not thanking. Next week we've got a really interesting show. We're going to talk about freedom of speech, and we talked a little bit about Kamal Salim. You can burn an American flag, you can fund a museum display of a crucifix sitting in urine, but can you publicly speak about PC issues like homosexuality, race, gender, religion, without getting attacked, suspended, or shut down by the police? And of course, we have a situation down in Allegan where the police stepped in. This was not on a PC basis, we don't think, but it was a fear of a safety issue. But the left seems to be very comfortable in coming up with reasons to keep folks from speaking. And, of course, the term civil discourse, which has been very heavily pushed by the left. How dare you say things that offend me? Is that just another tool to silence the critics of those? So next Sunday morning, we will talk about your freedoms of speech with John Van White and ex-terrorist Kamal Salim on News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon.
Damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dat-gum government. Oh, don't you know? Oh, don't you love them sometimes? Hey, boy. Sometimes.
Hey, folks, this is Dave Ramsey. Washington.
Attention area car buyers! It's our first sale of the year at Great Lakes Ford Lincoln in Muskegon. Make winter driving fun and just go in the snow in a new 2012 Ford Edge, Escape, Explorer, Expedition, and F-Series pickup, or a Lincoln MKX, MKZ, Navigator, or MKT, all slack up to $9 grand off. $9 grand off! Now at Great Lakes Ford. Looking for pre-owned? Get an 08 Ford Escape 4x4 for just $229 a month with $0 down. An 05 F-150 Super Crew XLT with just 62,000 miles, or an 09 Ford Taurus all-wheel drive. Your choice, just $239 a month with $0 down. Plus, make no payments till spring. For credit, call 231-777-2750. And we want your trade-in. It's our first sale of the year. But hurry, it all ends soon at Great Lakes Ford Lincoln in Muskegon, the dealer you can trust.
Discount from MSRP, 4.99% APR, 72 months plus tax and fees with qualified credit rebates included, subject to prior sales. See dealer for details.
The Talk of Muskegon is News Talk 1090 WKBZ Muskegon and heard 24 hours a day on WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
Once again, good morning and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Polka Melodies. I'm Tom Sanaki right here on the Talk of Muskegon and beautiful